This is a charm bracelet made with Shrinky Dinks. And Shrinky Dinks were popular around the 70s and 80s. And they've kind of made a comeback. You can buy them in the store now and pretty easy to find. But a lot of people don't really know how they work or what they are. I think they've heard of them as something that used to be popular, kind of like a macrame. But they don't really know how to do it unless someone shows them or they have a kit. They're probably not going to try it. So I have here some of the packs of Shrinky Dink paper. There's two different kinds. So there's the Frosted Rough and Ready, which is transparent, and one side is rough and textured. You can kind of tell by the sound of it that this has been scratched and roughed up so that you can draw on it. And the other side is shiny and glossy, like this. The clear ones are the ones that I like to use. I prefer these because you can do your own design on them, or you can do you can trace out of a coloring book, or because you can see behind it, you can slip any image behind it and trace over it. And then there are the bright white Shrinky Dinks that look like this. Sometimes the packaging changes, it just depends on when you buy them, but this is currently what the pack looks like in the store. And the bright white is glossy on both sides, and it is just a piece of thin, white, shiny plastic. And the back side has the same shine to it. So with the bright white Shrinky Dinks, you have to use Sharpies. So you'd have to use any kind of colored Sharpie, permanent marker, and you don't want to use just any old permanent marker that's a store brand or a cheaper version that you got somewhere that's not a true Sharpie brand, because even if they say they are permanent, I don't know why, but they will wash off if they get wet. And if you're wearing it as a charm bracelet and you're going to be washing your hands, it could get wet and you don't want your design coming off. So these are all Frosted Rough and Ready, and they were not made on the bright white. So the only thing is one side is dull because that's where I colored, and the other side is shiny, so it makes it charm. They shrink when you put them in the oven, and they go down to about 1/9 of their original size. And you want to use a toaster oven, something that's not going to get too incredibly hot too fast, because you want to keep a close eye on them because they do shrink pretty quick once they hit that optimum temperature. So I'll show how we make these. If you're going to use the Frosted Rough and Ready, you can just freehand it. And that's what I like about it, because you can just go for it. You can start with a pencil, but it doesn't erase very well. So if you make a mistake, you're kind of stuck with it, with at least the smudge marks on there that it will leave behind. But if you kind of know what you want, you can go for it. If not, you can always use a coloring book page or print something online. Just search up an image of what you want. You want it to be big enough, though. You don't want anything too small that has too much detail, but you could find something that's what you want to use and use one of these to trace it and then color it in. And when you color it in, you want to color pretty dark and press hard so that your color shows up nice and bold like these are. And so I'll start with, let's see, I also brought a couple of these out because you could also, if you needed a basic shape, you could always use a cookie cutter to trace and get the shape you wanted. Something like this could get you a little star like this when it shrinks down. I gave him little 3D glasses. But I think I'll show how to make the little boba like this today. And I'll just freehand that. So I have a little piece. The papers come in 8x10 size sheets. This is, I just cut it into quarters because when I work with the kids, I don't want to give them a full sheet because a lot of times they'll mess up on their first design and then you've ruined it and wasted a piece of paper. So I just start with giving them a small piece and I say, this is your piece, and then when you're done, you can cut it out and we'll give you another one because I don't want to waste it. When you cut it out, you have to be pretty careful with it because sometimes the plastic will sort of snag on your scissors, or it can split pretty quickly if you're not careful when you're cutting it out. So if you're doing this with the kids, it might be better if you let them do the design and then you just go and cut it out for them so they don't snap their design in half. So I'm just going to freehand the little boba cup design, and I'll try to stay to the corner of the paper because if I can, and if I can only use maybe part of this or half of this, then I'll just save the rest of it and I can do another small design on the other side. But I'll start by just freehanding a little boba cup. My sister and I are pretty big fans of boba. And there's a little shop we like to go to by the house all the time. So I will sketch it out where I want it. I know I'm going to have some little boba balls floating around at the bottom, so I'll draw those where I want them with a regular pencil. Kind of make them look like they're loose and bouncy in there. Maybe these guys are stuck together like sometimes that happens. And then I'll show the straw where you can see the straw inside the cup. The top of it is flat, it's a wide straw, and the bottom of it usually has that angle so you can stab it into the drink. And then I guess I'll just draw a wiggly line where I want the tea to show that it's coming up to the top. So I pulled out some colors, colored pencils, but you can use any colored pencil really. If you really want a nice, vibrant, bold design, use a good brand like a Prismacolor, but you don't have to. A store brand is fine, or whatever you've got, Crayola, Rosart. I've got a mixture of everything in this big, huge bucket full of colored pencils. So I'll just be using an assortment. I don't know what brands these are, but I'll color the tea part, a milk tea, so I want it to be a light brown. And then get the rest colored in. Okay, so now I want to outline it so that all of the little pencil lines that I left plain are bold and that you can see them easily. So I will just go and outline the outside of the cup pretty thick, because when I cut it out, I want to see this bold line. I don't want to cut any of it away, so just in case I do, I'll make it nice and bold. I gave this one a red straw. My first one has that green straw, so it kind of looks like a Starbucks cup, but I want this one to look more like a boba cup, and sometimes those places give you different colored straws. I think the place we go to gives us black straws, but I think this one will make it look more like a true boba. Alright, I'm going to outline the straw that pokes out of the top, so the whole outline of the drawing is bold. I noticed on the straw I made it darker, the part that is not stuck inside the drink. And the other part down below, I shaded it a little bit, so I just didn't do it as dark. I didn't press as hard. That way it looks kind of like it's submerged in the milk tea. So that's how I did like that. And then I guess along the top here, I could leave that line faint, because that would be inside the cup. It would be a little foggy and harder to tell what you're looking at there. So I think I'll leave it just like that. My original one, I gave him a little face, which was so cute, but I don't think I'll give this one a face. I'll just leave it like it is. So that's that, and then I need to cut it out. So I'll cut it carefully. So I punched a little hole right there in the corner, and this guy's ready to go in the oven. Okay, so I have the oven set up, and I turned it to 300. It's just a little toaster oven that I only use for things like Shrinky Dinks or clay. So I have a little pan ready to go in here. And I have my little Shrinky Dink boba ready to drop in. Sometimes if you let the oven get hot enough, you can drop it on the pan and it'll start to curl up right away. And sometimes your first instinct is to take it out and save it because it looks like it's ruined because it's curling up and sticking together, but really just let it go and it will flatten itself out eventually. Sometimes if it has a lot of funky angles or weird shapes like the crane that I did on this one, this guy needed some help because he stuck together pretty good in the oven. And then I just had to take a couple of toothpicks and separate him wherever he stuck together. But since ours is a pretty basic shape, aside from that little straw on the top, it shouldn't give us any trouble. I'm going to set him down on the pan and try to leave the oven open if I can so that you can watch how he shrinks up. Alright, so I turned up the temp just a bit to get this hot enough so that when I open the oven, it stays hot. You can see him curling up and starting to shrink, and he looks like he needs some help, but we're going to try to let him flatten out on his own before we have to jump in and intervene. And I've got my little silicone heat-safe oven mitt ready to go when I need to pull him out and rescue him. because you don't want to leave them in there forever. Not sure what happens to a Shrinky Dink when they stay in the oven forever, but I don't want to find out today. Okay, and he naturally fixed himself and flattened out, and he's starting to lay flat as we speak. So sometimes you can help him by poking him a little bit with something that's not going to burn you when you're reaching in the oven. Right now the glossy side is facing up. Doesn't really matter which side you put down on the pan, as long as your pan is clean. If there's anything sticky on there, I would say try to use a piece of foil or something underneath it, so that way you don't risk anything sticking to your Shrinky Dink when it gets hot. But this pan is pretty clean and only been used for crafts, so it's pretty safe. We'll turn off the oven, we'll let him settle down, and when he's cool enough to handle, we'll be able to take him out and put a ring on him to hang him up as a charm. Okay, so he's out of the oven. He's still a little warm, but he's cool enough to touch. He has that little hole in there so that if we want to make him a charm, we're able to, and it's close enough to the edge where I'm not going to have to stretch the ring too far to get it into the hole. And the other side has that shine to it, so it's got that charm, that sort of glass look. And you can tell all of your little darkest spots that you colored, kind of the color shrinks up, so it looks a little more dark, a little more pigmented when it shrinks up, because all that color is shrinking into one space. So I have right here where I have all my little jewelry findings, so I just use some basic needle nose pliers or jewelry tools to put them on. But in here, this is just you can use a little organizer box, and this is where I just sort all my things, like my little pin backings, earring backings, key rings, spacer beads, earring hooks. I've got eye pins and head pins in here, and anything you need to make earrings and jewelry. But I'm just going to be using a split ring today, so split ring, like one of these. And you can actually open them with your fingers if you wanted to, or if you want to save your fingers, you can use a plier. Just open it just enough for you to slip your charm onto it, like that, let it hang. Okay, and then with those pliers, or maybe with some flat ones, and if they have grooves on there, that's even better so it can grip it. Just squeeze those ends together and close it up enough so that it's not going to open up and lose your charm. And that's it. He's all done.